Can you really sit here? You're not part of the family just married in. My mother-in-law said mean things to me while we were having dinner at a fancy restaurant. She looked at me with a smirk and waved her hand. I felt so mad but tried to stay calm. Are you telling me to leave? I asked her. I was shaking with anger. Just as I was about to get up and leave, my mother-in-law stopped me. Hold on, if you're leaving early, who's going to pay the bill? Give me the money. She said it with a proud look on her face. I smiled back at her and said, why should I pay for someone I barely know? My name is Maya, and I'm 29 years old. I work in an office. My husband, Tyrell, is the same age as me, and we usually have a good time together. But there's one problem, my mother-in-law. She's always trying to control me and make me do things her way. My mother-in-law lives close by, so she often visits our house without being asked and keeps complaining about everything. She always has something to say about my cooking, saying it's not good enough for her son. She also criticizes how I keep the house, calling me a failure. Even though she knows I work during the day, she comes in the evening and mocks me for being at home. But she acts differently when my husband is around, so he doesn't believe me when I tell him about her behavior. He thinks she's fine because he hasn't seen her being mean to me. She seems normal at first, so my husband doesn't understand how bad it really is. Now things have gotten worse. She even has a key to our house that my husband gave her, and she uses it to come in whenever she wants, complaining about cleaning and cooking. She also talks badly about me to our neighbors. It's just one thing after another with her. I've been telling my husband for a while now that I want us to move far away from my in-laws, but he's been too busy with a big project at work to take me seriously. Then something good happened. My husband got a promotion. His project was a big success, so he got promoted and he'll be making more money now. Now that we're making more money, what do you think about starting a family? But if we're going to have kids, I want to live in a place that's good for them. There aren't many places for kids to play around here, and not many daycare centers. Don't you think it's time we moved? Finally, my husband agreed that we should move. I was happier about this than I was about his promotion, but that happiness didn't last long. The next day, my mother-in-law showed up at our house unannounced like usual. I was annoyed, thinking she was going to nag me again, but this time it was different. I want to celebrate my son's promotion by taking him to a fancy restaurant. It's really expensive, but the food is great, and everyone there is very nice, she said. That sounds nice. Good for you, I replied. You're still not very friendly, she said. Anyway, I want you to come with us. Please come. I'll see if I can, but it might not work out, I said. Don't say that. We want you to come, she insisted. Even though I said I might not be able to make it, my mother-in-law just smiled and left. She used to exclude me from things, but now she's inviting me and saying she'll wait. Something's up. When I asked my husband about it later, he said he had already agreed to go with her. She booked the restaurant for us, and I'm excited about it, he said. You're excited about this, right, Maya? My husband asked. Sorry, but I'm not really looking forward to it. I'm worried about how much it'll cost at such an expensive place. I don't want to go. Just tell them I'm busy and have fun without me, I replied. Why are you being so negative? Plus, it's not just us going. My brothers and their wives will be there too. It wouldn't be right if you didn't come and celebrate with the whole family, my husband said, eager for us to go to the fancy restaurant. He really wanted me to go, even though I didn't want to. He didn't seem to listen to me anymore. If he believes his mom more than me, I'll use the voice recorder I bought online to record her being mean to me. I thought to myself, she's probably going to be mean to me at the celebration too. I'll record her and show it to my husband. If he still takes her side, I'll think about divorcing him. Making that decision made me feel a bit better. But the day of meeting my mother-in-law at the restaurant felt really sad, and I couldn't stop sighing. I didn't know my husband's brothers well. I had only met them briefly at our wedding, and I barely remembered talking to their wives beyond saying hello. When we got to the restaurant, the waiter took us to a big room. My mother-in-law, One of my husband's brothers and his wife, and another brother and his wife were already there, sitting down. The fancy food was already on the table, and there was only one empty seat. My husband looked confused and wondered if there was a mistake. Did the waiter mess up? "I'll go check," he said and left the room. As soon as he left, everyone started eating. Then my mother-in-law stood up and looked at me with a mean expression. "There's no seat for you. Why would I invite someone who just married into our family to our celebration? So here's your choice. Prove you want to be part of our family or leave and never come back. What's it going to be?" Without hesitating, I said, "No, I'm leaving." My mother-in-law looked surprised for a moment. Did she really think I would beg her to accept me as family in this situation? No chance. "Listen, if you pay for everyone's meal here, I'll accept you as part of Terrell's family. You must be upset about being treated like a stranger, so pay up and become family," my mother-in-law said. "I already told you, I'm leaving. Why should I pay for someone else's family's meal?" I replied as I walked away. Mother-in-law slammed the table and yelled, "Don't you understand? I'm trying to make you part of the family. Are you okay with being a stranger? Pay up." "No, I'm fine being a stranger. And since I'm a stranger, I'm not paying for your meal. Goodbye." Mother-in-law tried to catch up to me, but by the time she got to the door of the room from the farthest seat, I was already at the restaurant's exit. When I got home and was thinking of emailing my husband, he returned within 10 minutes. The waiter said the reservation was correct, and my mom was causing a scene. "I heard everything from my brother," he said. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. You came back quickly," I said. "It seems like she would have caused a scene if you had stayed," he replied. "How could I sit with them after they insulted my Maya?" My husband quickly understood what had happened after I left and hurriedly came back home to me. After I said I was okay being treated like a stranger, it seemed to wake up my husband's brother's wives. They used to think they had to silently endure being treated badly, but seeing me stand up for myself made them realize they could too. They both left and their husbands quickly followed. I expected my mother-in-law to complain, and sure enough, the phone started ringing nonstop within 3 hours. I ignored it, but it was so loud that I had to block the calls. Then I got a call from an unknown number. "Hi, sorry for calling so late. Is this Maya's phone?" The person on the other end said he was a police officer from the nearby police station. He told me that after everyone left, my mother-in-law tried to eat and then wanted me to pay the bill later, but the restaurant didn't want to deal with her after the scene she caused. They refused to let her pay later, thinking I wouldn't come back after leaving so angrily. My mother-in-law then called me to come back and pay, but I ignored all her calls. The restaurant suggested she pay with a card. But my mother-in-law didn't have a credit card and didn't have enough cash to pay for everyone's meals. She tried calling other family members to help, but nobody picked up. Eventually, she got really angry and started yelling that it was all my fault. She got so mad that she started breaking expensive vases and flower pots in the restaurant, which made the staff call the police. The police tried to calm her down, but she kept saying she wasn't wrong. The restaurant didn't just have an unpaid bill but also had to deal with a difficult customer, so they asked someone to take her home. Feeling bad for ignoring the police's calls, we reluctantly went back to the restaurant. When we got there, the police were trying to calm my mother-in-law down. She had her arms crossed and then suddenly screamed when she saw me, "You're useless. This happened because you didn't pay the bill. It's only right to help your mother, isn't it? Pay up now." I was shocked that she would say something so threatening even with the police there. The police told us that if nobody took her home, they would either drive her to her in-laws' house in their car or arrest her for not paying the restaurant bill. When I said, "Take her away, arrest her, or whatever, just make her take responsibility," with a serious tone, my mother-in-law looked shocked. She said, "How can you say something so heartless? I can't believe it. Just pay the bill. It's not good to have a family member arrested." I replied, "I don't care. I'm not family, and I don't want to be around someone who acts crazy and causes trouble." As I tried to leave the restaurant and let the police handle it, my husband, who had been quiet, gave me a stern look. He said, "I know what happened to Maya was wrong, but is it really worth getting arrested over?" I replied, "That's not the point. She's in trouble because she didn't pay the bill and caused a scene. It has nothing to do with me. Or are you saying it's my fault for not paying for 6 people's meals even though I didn't eat?" My husband didn't say anything, but he walked past me and went to talk to the police and the restaurant staff. I knew what my husband was going to do when he walked away, so I called out to him, "If you pay for her meal and make it up to her, we're getting divorced." Think about that. But my husband didn't say anything and took out his wallet. I sighed and left the restaurant. I walked home, packed my things, and got ready to leave. Just before the day changed, my husband came back. He said, "Mom's not getting arrested." It turns out she was really wrong. The restaurant said they'd forgive her if I paid them back and promised she wouldn't come back. I didn't have enough money, so I called my brothers for help. My husband kept talking about what happened after I left, looking tired. Maybe because I didn't react much, he came over to me looking upset. "What's with the bags?" he asked. "I'm getting ready to leave because we're getting divorced." "I told you if you took her side, we'd get divorced. You can't pretend you didn't hear me," I said to my husband as he watched me pack with surprise. Then he started shouting, "What's going on today? You've been acting weird all day. I know Mom did something bad, but why do we have to get divorced? I already told you I'm being mistreated, and even when you see proof and hear others talk about it, you still choose your almost arrested mom over me. Is it weird that I want to divorce someone like that?" "I've had enough," I replied. My husband kept talking, but I didn't really listen. I got ready to leave and also got the paperwork for the divorce. The next morning, I got the divorce papers and signed them right away. My husband didn't want to get divorced, but when I said I'd get a lawyer, he reluctantly signed. Then I submitted the papers. Finally, I could go back to being a stranger. Later, my husband moved out and went to live with his parents. He used to rely on me for most of the housework, so without me, the house became a mess. He didn't like the messy house and decided to cancel the apartment lease and go back to his parents' home. The older and younger brothers ended up doing the same. When my husband asked them for help with paying back the restaurant, they got into big fights with their wives. The wives said they shouldn't have to pay for something that wasn't their fault, but the brothers used their own money to help their mom without asking their wives. And they believed their mom's words that their wives were being unreasonable and might get them arrested. Seeing them disrespect me made their love for their wives fade away, and they were faced with divorce right then and there. They also went back to their parents' home, saying they didn't want to do housework. So in the end, my mother-in-law and the 3 childish brothers all went back to their parents' house. Now there could talk of the neighborhood, with everyone saying the brothers were abandoned by their wives. Mother-in-law calls it nonsense and tries to explain how useful and ungrateful we wives were. The husbands heard the story and just nodded smugly, saying, "I knew it was the wife's fault." Divorcing them was the best choice. Luckily, I had good relationships with my neighbors, and nobody believed those stories. Mother-in-law earned a reputation as a mom who didn't do a good job raising her sons, and the husbands were known as mama's boys who always took their mother's side instead of supporting their wives. Even though my angry mother-in-law and the husbands tried to reach out to me, I had changed my contact details and moved to a new place. They couldn't find us in the end and are probably still grumbling about it. Not having to deal with my mother-in-law's stress is a big relief, and making new friends has made a big difference too. During the divorce, I became friends with the ex-wives of my husband's brothers. We bonded over our shared frustrations with my mother-in-law. Now we often hang out, go out to eat, and shop together on weekends. I might even have to thank my ex-husband for introducing me to such wonderful friends. It's great to be free to do what we want now. It might seem obvious, but it feels really freeing. I want to live our lives without getting involved with people like my mother-in-law. I'm grateful to my new friends. If it weren't for them, I might still be living alone. They've made me feel happy and not lonely. I'm truly thankful, and I hope our friendship lasts forever.
You're saying you can't go on the trip I planned. If you don't come, you're no longer family. It's common sense since you married my son, isn't it? I and my mother-in-law said to me, seeking agreement from Cody. I halted Cody, who seemed like he wanted to say something, and reluctantly consented to her proposal. Goodness, marrying someone so naive to the world is such a hassle. As long as you understand, if you don't come, it's divorce. I'll re-educate you from now on, she continued with her ridiculous remarks. I was sick of it, but little did I know, this would be the last trip with my in-laws. I'm Liliana, 32 years old, and I run an app development company. It's still a small venture, but I love my work, and every day is a joy. My husband Cody is 37, 5 years older than me, and works at a bank. Both of us are passionate about our work, often discussing it for hours until the early morning. Cody is very understanding of my work, and we share household chores. Despite being married for 4 years, we don't have kids yet, but we both like children and hope to have them someday. My family runs an auto parts factory founded by my dad. It's now managed by my brother, which gives me the freedom to pursue my dream of starting my own app company. Even though our industries differ, I often consult with my supportive brother and dad, making my family a significant pillar in my life. Cody's family runs a small factory, and as an only child, Cody was expected to take over. However, he chose banking instead, much to his parents' disappointment. There were valid reasons for his decision. Firstly, the factory wasn't thriving, and Andy, his father, was considering shutting it down. Running a small factory is tough nowadays. As a child, Cody often heard his father talking with bank employees over the phone. Once he met a kind and cool banker during a visit to the factory and started accompanying his father to the bank for meetings just to meet him. Eventually, Cody aspired to be a banker, studied hard, and now works at a major bank. Our marriage seems fine on the surface, but it's not going well. Faye doesn't think highly of my job since I can work remotely. There are days I work from home, but she sees it as a frivolous job and doesn't understand it at all. I get it, for an older generation like our parents, my job is hard to grasp. It's not physically demanding, but it's still work, and it can be exhausting. I always adjust my work schedule around the in-laws' plans, so I never inconvenience them. I don't insist on them understanding, but it's frustrating when they think remote work is easy just because I have a flexible schedule. There are other things Effie disapproves of about us. We built our house when we got married, located about halfway between our parents' homes. Despite taking different routes, it takes less than 30 minutes to reach either house. As a dual-income couple, we manage our spending and savings separately. We value our independence and privacy, even as a couple. We contribute a fixed amount for living expenses every month, save the rest for the house, and manage our own money. Otherwise, Effie disapproves of this lifestyle too. She thinks it's wrong for a couple to talk about privacy. According to her, it's odd for family members to have secrets, and she doesn't consider them a true family. I think because Effie doesn't like me, she finds fault in everything I do. She adores her son Cody, so I'm just a nuisance to her. Every time we meet, she makes snide remarks about us not having children yet. It's something I'm sensitive about, and I'd rather not be reminded. Childbearing is a delicate topic, and usually it's polite to avoid it, but Effie brings it up every time, so I've started to avoid her to not worry Cody. I've been staying late at work on purpose to avoid meeting her. Effie has done many other surprising things, but there was one incident I couldn't forgive. It happened on the day of my best friend's wedding. After her wedding, my friend was moving abroad, and we wouldn't be able to meet as often since we both work. I was really looking forward to celebrating her big day. However, a week before the wedding, Andy came to me with a request. He had an important business reception and wanted me there. I naturally refused. The only thing more important than my friend's wedding would be a parent on their deathbed. That night, something unexpected happened. When I got home from work, my in-laws were at our house. As soon as she saw me, Effie confronted me angrily. Liliana, what are you thinking? Refusing Andy's request is outrageous. You're my son's wife. It's only natural to prioritize family obligations. Your refusal is unacceptable. You need to rethink your priorities, she yelled at me. Cody was there too, but he said nothing. After asking, I found out the reception was critical for the future of the company. But to me, my best friend's wedding was just as important. I told Effie that I understand what you both are saying, but my best friend's wedding is an important event for me, and I don't want to miss it. Besides, I'm not even an employee of Andy's company. As I said this, even Cody chimed in. Can't you make an exception this time? This is really about the survival of the company. I'm going to. and it's a family effort. We can make it up to you for missing the wedding. It's a family crisis. Can't you help us?" I was shocked. I never thought Cody would say such a thing. He knew how much I was looking forward to the wedding. Then Andy spoke. I understood Liliana's point, but this time, we really needed her help. The atmosphere made it hard for me to refuse. It wasn't just any reception. In the end, I reluctantly agreed to skip my best friend's wedding. I told my friend the truth and explained why I couldn't come. Given that I had previously talked to my best friend about my family situation, she understood my predicament. In fact, she was more concerned about me. I'm fortunate to have such a kind friend. I felt guilty for missing her big day, but once the decision was made, I had to focus on making the reception a success. On the day of the event, Cody and I arrived at the venue early and tried to contact Effie. However, for some reason, Effie didn't answer her phone. As I worried about what to do, the in-laws finally arrived at the venue just 10 minutes before it was set to start. To my surprise, they were in a disheveled state, with messy hair and their suits and shirts all wrinkled. I was shocked and asked Effie what happened. "What's with your shirt? Today is an important reception, right?" She awkwardly responded, "I just overslept, Liliana. Make sure you're not rude." I was so close to snapping back with, "I don't want to hear that from you," but somehow I managed to hold back. I really want to give myself credit for keeping my composure during the reception. Effie, not knowing how to converse properly, made a series of rude comments to our guests. It seemed she meant them as jokes, but their strained smiles made it clear they weren't received well. As expected, we didn't secure the contract, and the reception ended without success. I thought to myself that it was to be expected. If I had known it would be like this, I would have preferred to go to my best friend's wedding. I was infuriated at being dragged into such a disastrous reception, ruining my plans and causing issues with the in-laws. To my dismay, they didn't acknowledge any wrongdoing. According to them, after such a lavish reception with no contract, it's almost like dealing with con artists. Good thing we didn't make a deal with such strange people. I was speechless with astonishment. How can they be so blissfully unaware? After this incident, I became even more uncomfortable with my in-laws and started avoiding them. But unfortunately, there's something I can't avoid. Cody's family has a tradition of going on a family trip every year since his childhood, and it has continued even after we got married. Since our marriage, I've been expected to join these trips, but I'm always stuck with the chores and driving, arranging hotels, booking, researching tourist spots. All these tedious tasks are my responsibility, and if I dare to voice my opinion, I'm immediately shut down with "don't overstep." Even when we visit tourist spots, I'm often left to stay in the room, never getting to visit places I like. Honestly, I dread these annual family trips and always hope I might fall ill on the day. Now, this year's trip season has arrived. Despite their claims of being financially tight, my in-laws insist on a lavish trip as usual. I was tasked with finding the hotel. I planned meticulously to keep Effie, who's always complaining, in a good mood. Since I'm the only one who doesn't drink, I'm the default driver, but I don't mind as it spares me from their conversations. However, a crisis occurred just before the trip. I received news that my mom had collapsed and was in critical condition. In such a situation, going on a trip, even a short one, was out of the question. I lost my composure, thinking I needed to see my mom as soon as possible. It was the day before the trip, so I decided to cancel and started preparing to go to the hospital. Cody offered to come to the hospital with me, but I refused. I felt like he was implying my mom wouldn't make it, which I didn't want to hear. When Cody and I went to tell Effie we couldn't join the trip, she exploded in anger. "You're saying you can't go on the trip I planned. If you don't come, you're no longer family. As my son's wife, it's common sense to prioritize the family trip, right?" "Right, Cody?" Effie said, seeking agreement from Cody. Effie interrupted Cody, who looked like he wanted to say something, as if to say she wouldn't entertain any opposing opinions. In that situation, I was so dumbfounded that I couldn't find the words to speak. Nothing could be more important than being with my mom in her critical condition. Just as I was about to respond, my brother called. "It seems Mom's condition is serious but a bit stable." I expressed my desire to rush to her, but he said visiting isn't possible right now due to a contagious disease outbreak. He mentioned that if she recovers, we could arrange a short visit later, so there was no point in coming immediately. Hearing this, I hesitated about what to do. Noticing my indecision, my brother asked what was wrong. I honestly explained the situation about the trip and my current dilemma to my brother. A bit angry, he made a good suggestion I hadn't thought of in my distress. The trip destination was near my parents' home. He assured me that I could quickly get to my family's house from the hotel if needed, and there shouldn't be any problem. Indeed, that's true. If I can't visit the hospital, staying at home or at the hotel doesn't make much difference. Accepting my brother's suggestion, I told Effie, "All right, I'll go on the trip." Effie responded, "Goodness, if you had said that from the start, I wouldn't have had to get angry. It's hard to marry someone so naive. As long as you understand, if you don't come, it's divorce. Honestly, I'll have to re-educate you from now on." Cody looked surprised, but we agreed to go on the condition that I could leave for the hospital if needed. He remarked, "It would be trouble if our driver suddenly disappeared, right?" "Oh, good, you're part of this family now, so our needs come first. Remember your role as my son's wife. This is a major event. The family trip should be your top priority." Her triumphant attitude and obvious excitement really irked me, but to avoid further trouble, I decided to endure it. On the day of the trip, I was so worried about Mom that I couldn't put down my phone. Yet Effie was drinking beer from the morning. The back seat of my car, which I was driving, turned into a party scene. I was surprised to see Cody joining in the drinking. However, this was a trip for which everyone had rearranged their schedules. I told myself that it would be nice if everyone could enjoy the trip since we had all made the effort to come. During the trip, Effie's whims were relentless demands to stop for the bathroom immediately or to go to the grocery store for more alcohol. I felt like a servant, but I was prepared to endure such things. That's when my mobile phone rang. It was a call from my brother, thankfully informing me that Mom had survived. Her condition had stabilized and she had regained consciousness. The diagnosis was subarachnoid hemorrhage. However, I couldn't be completely at ease yet. There were concerns about potential after effects. It was reassuring to have my brother keeping me updated as I was feeling anxious. When I shared the news of Mom's recovery with my in-laws, Effie commented, "If she's better, there's no need to bother us with such news. You're making a big deal out of nothing." And then Andy added, "Exactly, no need to spoil our trip with such grim news. We're supposed to be enjoying ourselves." I was disgusted that Andy shared Effie's view and didn't want to think of these people as my family. During the trip, they made a ruckus in the hotel, drinking and partying, which was truly embarrassing. This incident deepened my distrust of my in-laws. Thankfully, Mom's condition remained stable, and there was no need to rush to the hospital, allowing us to complete the trip and return home. I was relieved. While I was sorting out the laundry, Effie came to our house. Wondering what it could be this time, she said, "You have a dryer at your house, right?" "We don't have one, so let me use it," and showed up with loads of laundry. I was exasperated and replied, "There's a laundromat with dryers. I have a load of laundry of my own, and I'm using it right now, so it's not possible." To which she retorted, always so stingy, "Once you're done, it's fine. I'll come to pick it up tomorrow. Leave it finished by then," and attempted to leave her laundry in our washroom. Cody stepped in. "Go to a laundromat. Liliana is tired, and she has to work tomorrow. It's not possible." Effie got angry, feeling her son was defending me. She left in a hurry, spewing insults and slamming the door, leaving the laundry behind. In hindsight, if things had been different that day, maybe the course of events would have changed. Later, Effie returned and said, "During the trip, I realized something, Liliana. You lack awareness of being married to Cody. We might face similar situations in the future. Since we couldn't discuss it, I've decided that Liliana should make a decision." She put a family contract and divorce papers on the table. I was speechless. What even is a family contract? It was ridiculous and confirmed my belief that she can't have a normal conversation. The saving grace was Cody's reaction. He said, "I have something to say. If you keep imposing your biased views on us, I'll cut ties. I can't deal with this anymore." "What do you think, Liliana? She's not your servant or housekeeper. You're the one who's mistaken about your position." Effie was stunned. Until now, Cody had hardly ever opposed anything. It wasn't because he agreed with Effie's ideas, but rather he kept quiet to avoid the hassle. Following Cody's words, Effie's anger turned towards me. "You've changed Cody since marrying him. He used to be so sweet. It's crazy for him to talk to me like that. You must have brainwashed him. Turn him back to the old Cody," she accused, confronting me. She believed I had supposedly brainwashed Cody into defying her. But then Cody spoke up for me. "The one doing the brainwashing is you, right? Always going on a rampage without listening to anyone's opinion. Frankly, you're a toxic parent." You never let me do what I wanted to after getting married. Instead of calming down, you started spewing your venom at Liliana. Enough is enough. I'm not going to divorce, and if you have a problem, you should stay out of our lives, Cody said. Hearing this, Effie turned to Andy, who was with her, and burst into tears. Andy responded, "If that's what Cody thinks, then fine. We'll cut ties, do whatever you want," and stormed out. I was surprised but happy that Cody stood up for us like that. Feeling frustrated, I told my brother about this. He became furious, saying he couldn't stay silent if they were acting this way. He decided to take action. It led to a tragedy in the in-laws' family. Turns out, my brother's company was a client of my in-laws' company. We had kept our family's company name a secret to avoid creating a power imbalance. The in-laws had no idea they were dealing with my family's company. But with things as they were, we couldn't continue like this. Though I had been patient, avoiding mixing business and personal matters, it had reached its limit. My brother had been having issues with them not meeting deadlines. "You can't cherish those who don't cherish you," he said. I discussed it with Cody before talking to the in-laws, and he agreed. Cody also said he had had enough. My brother ended the contract with the in-laws company. It was a business decision. They had been a problematic company, not paying on time and missing deadlines. But we had tolerated it because it was Cody's family's business. But there was no longer a need for that. Later, when my in-laws found out about this, they came to us in tears. Now they're constantly apologizing. They pleaded with my brother to reconsider the contract, but of course, that was impossible. It was their responsibility for not meeting deadlines. They should have been grateful for our patience. Cody explained everything to his parents, but they refused to accept it and ended up cutting ties in a rage. Cody wasn't sad. He felt relieved. He had been torn and tired, struggling between us and his family. Since then, we've been living peacefully. I learned that Cody had been supporting his family financially, but he stopped that. Now the in-laws' factory went bankrupt. Even without this incident, it was on the brink of closure, drowning in debt. I heard that Cody had been paying for those annual trips, and it's astonishing how they could behave that way, using someone else's money. Now the in-laws are living modestly, and Effie has recently started working. I was honestly surprised to see her, who used to call herself a president's wife, working. One day I saw Effie being scolded while doing a cleaning job. I felt bad for thinking this was karma. She'll learn the harsh realities of society and hopefully straighten out. As for us, work is going well. We haven't had children yet, but we enjoy our jobs and life is fulfilling. We're planning an overseas trip for our next vacation. For a while, we're thinking of enjoying life without children. Mom is struggling to get by on her pension, and we, who are still able to work, should lend her a hand, shouldn't we? During the discussion about inheritance following their father's passing, Billy, the second son, earnestly addresses his brother and sister-in-law. However, it appears his words didn't quite strike a chord with them. "How about we consider that just because she's relying on her pension, doesn't mean we're obligated to hand over our hard-earned money?" suggests Billy. "Exactly. Is our mother-in-law expecting us to foot her bills?" adds his wife. Suddenly, the eldest son and his wife shoot me looks as though they've tasted something sour, a gaze not befitting of one's parents. "Stop trying to sponge off us, it's becoming a nuisance. The pensioner should fend for herself, except for special occasions like weddings and funerals. Stay out of our affairs," they retort. "Hey, that's enough," Billy interjects, but I find myself looking down, clenching my fists. Not only are they seemingly impatient for my husband's demise, but they're also griping about inheritance and have labeled me a freeloader. Perhaps I've raised Billy wrong. I can't endure it any longer. Yet I address the eldest son and his wife calmly. "I understand your perspective. Let's sever our ties. My name is Catherine, and I'm turning 65 this year. I live with my retired husband, who is kind and supportive. Together, we've raised 2 children. Dan, our eldest son, and Billy, our second. Recently, we've considered renovating our aging home, hoping to live with Dan and his wife, Rebecca, once the renovations are complete." When I broached the topic with Dan over the phone, his reluctance was palpable. "Living together? Spare me. Rebecca won't like it either," he retorted. "But if we're investing in renovations for our shared benefit, shouldn't it also accommodate their needs?" However, from the other end of the line, I could almost hear Rebecca scoff. "Living together? That's utterly impossible." I see. Let's just drop this conversation, I said, feeling the weight of the eldest son and his wife's usual superiority complex and cold demeanor. After I hung up, I relayed Dan and the other's sentiments to my husband, exactly as they were. He wore a somewhat lonely expression but spoke up cheerfully. Can't be helped. Let's focus on making the renovations for our comfort in old age. Following that decision, our home was remodeled to our liking, transformed into a barrier-free space. Several months later, scheduled for a meal with both our sons and their wives, Billy and Anne, our second son, arrived first. Anne, always considerate, handed me a hostess gift and immediately offered to help in the kitchen. "Mother-in-law, you're always so good at cooking," she praised. "Oh, thank you. I'm grateful for your help, Anne," I replied. As we chatted, the eldest son and his wife arrived, plopping heavily onto the sofa and demanding tea. Observing me preparing it, Rebecca and Dan grumbled impatiently. "They have no consideration," Rebecca complained. "Exactly, we're guests here." "Hurry up," Dan added. Just as I was about to serve them, Billy approached Dan quietly from the side. "Dan, can't you at least do that much by yourself?" he whispered. "Shut up," Dan snapped back. At Dan's harsh words, I sighed inwardly. Billy and Anne were kind, yet even they faced Dan's overbearing attitude. However, we had called both siblings together for an important discussion. As dinner commenced, Dan, eating grumpily, broke the silence. "Hey Dad, since you called us here, you must have some business. Spit it out." My husband looked at me, and I nodded slightly. "The truth is, it has been found that I have lung cancer." Billy and Anne showed genuine surprise, while the expressions of the eldest son and his wife remained unchanged. "Dad, cancer? What's the current situation?" "Starting next week, I'll be hospitalized," I began, the weight of my words heavy in the air. "They told me the cancer has spread all over my body, and I've got about 6 months left." "That can't be." "Well, dreadful news," Dan muttered, almost as if it were someone else's burden. Rebecca chimed in, "You can't beat age, right? My uncle quickly passed away from stomach cancer too." Thoughtless words pricked at me, and I couldn't help but raise my voice. "Would you two just stop it?" I interjected. "It's fine, but—" My husband's gentle voice calmed me down as he turned his attention to his children. "I want you guys to look after your mother after I'm gone." "Of course, Dad. We'll take care of Mom, so don't worry," the second son and his wife assured us firmly. "Yes, please think about your own health, father-in-law," they added. However, the eldest son and his wife seemed disengaged, absorbed in their cell phones, not seeming to register their father's words at all. As the meal concluded, everyone began to depart. Since the eldest son and his wife left quickly, I stepped outside to see off the second son and his wife. "Mom, I know it's tough, but hang in there. We'll also help, of course. Please let us know anything," Billy expressed sincerely. "Thank you, Billy," I replied softly, touched by his kindness. With that heartfelt conversation, I bid farewell to the second son and his wife. My husband opted for palliative care over surgery and chemotherapy, so he was admitted to a hospice the following week. I began visiting the hospice almost daily, with my second son and his wife driving me and assisting in my husband's care. However, no matter how much I reached out, the eldest son and his wife never made an appearance. Then, about 5 months later, my husband's condition took a turn for the worse. I called the eldest son and his wife, informing them that this might be the end. Reluctantly, they appeared, but Dan neither held his father's hand, nor uttered a word to him. Instead, they merely stared at my frail husband as though he were a repulsive sight. "We've shown our faces, isn't that enough? We have matters to attend to, so we'll be leaving now," the elder couple announced abruptly, exiting the hospital room not even 10 minutes after their arrival. As soon as they left, I noticed Rebecca grabbing her jacket. Hastily, I rushed after them. Approaching the staircase leading to the hallway, I saw them descending slowly, engrossed in their conversation and oblivious to my presence. "It really seems like Dad's time is near." "Hey, what's going to happen to the inheritance when father-in-law is gone?" Dan smiled at Rebecca's question. "Dad was just a regular employee, but Mom and the rest have been living quite comfortably lately, haven't they? Maybe they've been investing in the stock market or something. We could probably expect a decent inheritance." "Ha ha," Rebecca chuckled. "Oh, I can't wait. I've been longing for an overseas trip. I also want to design my own handbag. All we can do now is wait for things to wrap up," Dan remarked. Listening to their conversation, tears welled up in my eyes. I couldn't possibly bring myself to tell my husband about this. Unable to confront them, I silently returned to the hospital room. 2 weeks later, he passed away. I remained by his side for a long time, but it was Billy and his wife who offered me comfort, their support a solace in the midst of grief. I managed to hold myself together, and the funeral proceeded smoothly. After the service, with only family remaining, Dan, unable to contain his impatience, broached the topic of Dad's inheritance. "What the hell, Dan? We just laid Dad to rest today," Billy immediately reprimanded him, but Dan's glare silenced any further objections. "You, the second son, just shut up." With a firm gaze, I intervened. "We'll arrange a meeting to discuss the inheritance next week. For today, please just go home." At my words, the elder couple grunted and promptly left. The following week, the cheerful elder couple and the serious younger couple arrived at our home for the inheritance meeting. Facing them, I began, "Firstly, I should mention that your father's inheritance amounts to about $30,000. "What?" Dan exclaimed, visibly taken aback by the news. "I'd like to split this according to legal inheritance shares, with me taking half and each of you getting a quarter," I explained. "Wait, hold on. Are you sure there's only $30,000? Dan persisted, sensing something amiss in my tone. I handed him a thick envelope. "All the documents are in here. Please review them," I instructed. After inspecting the documents, Dan and Rebecca's faces twisted in frustration. "Damn, Dad was really strapped for cash, huh? So we're only getting $7,500 each. That's too little. If it's this low, give us the house too," Dan demanded, clearly dissatisfied. Billy's response was swift and angry. "Our mother still lives in that house. We won't give it up. It's because you wasted money on renovations that we're left with so little. If the inheritance is this small, the house stays with us," he declared firmly. Calmly, I addressed the irritated couple. "This house was painstakingly renovated by your father so we could live here in our old age. I won't just hand it over. I'll keep it as long as I live." "That's not fair. You can't keep everything to yourself," Dan protested, his fury evident. Billy intervened, restraining his brother. "Dad was concerned about Mom until the end. You might not understand it, Dan," he said softly, looking at me with concern. "We're going to announce our decision about the inheritance. Mom, you should take our side too." Dad would rest easy knowing that, Billy's wife added, nodding beside him. "If they won't share, we'll gladly take their part," Dan insisted. "That's impossible. Mom's living on her pension. It's tough. We who are working should be supporting her," Billy scolded his older brother and his wife sincerely, but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. "Just because she's living on her pension doesn't mean we can give our money away," Dan retorted, unyielding. "Exactly. Perhaps mother-in-law was planning to siphon off our money from the beginning," Rebecca added, her tone accusatory. The elder couple looked at me with disdain, their expressions sour and disrespectful. "Stop acting like parasites. It's a nuisance. Elderly women living on pensions should keep out of everything except for weddings and funerals. Just stay quiet," Dan lashed out. "Hey, that's enough," Billy intervened, but I kept my head down, fists clenched. Not only were they wishing for my husband's death, but they also complained about the inheritance and even labeled me as a parasite. I couldn't help but wonder where I had gone wrong in raising him. Regret flooded my heart, and tears threatened to spill from my eyes. But I couldn't afford to lose my composure in this moment. Gathering my feelings, I addressed Dan and Rebecca calmly. "I understand what you're saying. Let's sever our ties." At my words, the elder couple looked momentarily surprised before breaking into smirks. "Really? That's the best news I've heard," they remarked sarcastically as Dan and Rebecca hurried to leave. Before storming out, they threw one last barb at Billy and his wife, tauntingly calling them to take care of the parasite. As the door closed behind them, Billy and his wife rushed over to me. "Mom, are you okay? They're just too awful. We're always by your side. Please don't be upset," they comforted me. Still looking down, I raised my face and met their eyes. "Billy and I have something to tell you," I began. A few months later, while relaxing at home, Dan and Rebecca unexpectedly appeared, accompanied by Billy. "What's going on? We've severed our ties, haven't we?" Dan demanded, his voice raised. "Indeed, come on in," I invited them, ignoring their aggressive tone. As they entered, their faces flushed with anger. Billy spoke up with an apologetic tone. "Sorry, Mom." When asked about the house, I couldn't help but invite them in. That's fine for now. Everyone please come in, I said, leading them inside. But as soon as the eldest couple stepped into the living room, they began to raise their voices. What do you mean you're giving the house to Billy? You're disregarding us, they protested. I maintained my composure and explained calmly, Billy has promised to maintain the house and preserve your father's memories. That's why I've decided to leave it to him. Dan stared at me, taken aback. What do you mean? He questioned. Billy and Anne have been a great support to me. It's only natural, I replied warmly, thanking them. We're not here to hear that. You said you'd take over the house yourself, didn't you? The eldest couple retorted. Glancing at the eldest daughter-in-law, who seemed ready to explode, I elaborated. I thought I'd hand it over to someone who would respect your father's and my wishes. Besides, I've started receiving some rental income. Their surprise evident, I continued matter-of-factly. Remember last year when my father, your grandfather, passed away? Billy attended the funeral, but you couldn't because you were out of town. Well, your grandfather was a landlord who owned several buildings and apartments. Finally, the inheritance has been settled, and I've started receiving rental income. The eldest couple's faces displayed shock. We never heard anything about that, they exclaimed. About that rental income, how much are we talking about? Dan inquired. It's about $3 million a year, so it's easy for me to give one of the houses to my adorable son and his wife, I revealed. At this, Dan and Rebecca sprang to their feet. Wait, hold on a minute. If Billy and his wife get one, then we should too, they argued. Why should I split my assets with someone who called me a parasite? Wasn't it you who told me to stay away? I shot back sharply. Caught off guard, Dan and Rebecca began to stutter in response. I fixed them with a stern glare and pointed to the door. All right, the conversation is over. Please go home now. Wait, hold on, Mom. Please listen to me. Deanna approached me, flustered, and suddenly clung to my arm. I looked at him coldly. You have no right to call me Mom. Please, you can't just demand a share of the house and money too. We're struggling, the eldest daughter-in-law pleaded loudly. I raised an eyebrow. Struggling? What do you mean? I demanded. Dan hesitated before starting to explain. We thought we'd received Dad's inheritance and lived a bit too luxuriously. We kind of got into debt, he confessed. I forcefully shook off Dan's arm, feeling a surge of disgust. I didn't think you could be this stupid. This is the bed you've made, so you need to lie in it, Dan, I retorted sharply. That's just too cruel, the eldest couple protested, their faces crestfallen. I had the final say. From now on, I'll transfer my assets to Billy while I'm still alive. I won't give a penny to you who cut ties with me. Please never bother us again. Billy stood up to the deflated eldest couple. If you understand, then go home quickly. Don't come near Mom or us ever again, he declared firmly, escorting them to the door. After that, the eldest couple apparently ended up going bankrupt from the debt they incurred. From their run-down apartment, you could hear Dan and Rebecca arguing night after night. For them, who couldn't manage this simple act of cherishing their family, a decent future probably isn't in the cards. As for me, since I passed the house on to Billy, I bought and moved into an apartment nearby that comes with caregiving services. Billy and his wife often come to visit, and they've recently had an adorable baby. I want to continue building a good relationship with Billy's family and cherish each and every day.